Good morning. We have Jean call the roll.
Here. Present.
Here.
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 Here. Here. Here. Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here. Here. Thank you, Jane. This morning we're honored to have with us some very special guests, the recipients of the 2012 Regents Teaching Excellence Awards. To lead us in our awards presentation, let me turn it over to Regent Chuck Pruitt, Chair of the Awards Selections Committee. Regent Pruitt.
Thank you, President Smith. On behalf of the Board of Regents, it is my pleasure to welcome some distinguished guests here this morning. As Regent Smith has told you, the recipients of the 2012 Regent Teaching Excellence Awards. Joining them in the gallery today are family, friends, and supporters, and we just want to welcome you all here today. The Regents Teaching Excellence Awards, which mark their 20th anniversary this year, recognize and honor some of the UW system's most outstanding teachers, departments, and programs. It's a welcome reminder of what a treasure we have in our faculty and academic staff, those who bring that special dedication, creativity, and passion to their craft, and to whom we trust the education and enlightenment of the citizens of the future. Recognizing outstanding teachers allows us also to remember those in our own lives who taught us important lessons and shaped our futures. We often hear that exceptional teachers have a certain magic in the classroom, that they creatively inspire students not only to learn, but also to want to learn. In different ways, and as you're about to hear, I think all of our honorees today could be said to have that magic touch. They are engaged in that most important, almost sacred task of teaching our students not what to think, but how to think. They are red-blooded examples of the critical importance of the sifting and winnowing process that supports the pillars of academic freedom that any great university needs to advance, protect, and defend. We are honoring 3 award recipients today, 2 professors and 1 academic program. It is a big deal. This is the highest recognition bestowed by the UW system to members of its faculty and academic staff for outstanding career achievements in teaching. I'd like to thank several of my fellow Regents who joined me on this year's selection committee, Regents Tony Evers, Katie Pointer, and Jose Vasquez. We all greatly appreciate the time they spent, their thoughtful participation, and wise counsel. I can speak for them in saying that deciding on the winners was difficult, but it was also a privilege to see up close the kind of outstanding talent that is found throughout the University of Wisconsin system. This year's winners are shining examples of the powerful impact that such excellent teachers can have on students' lives. I think our winners would be the first to acknowledge that they did not get here on their own. The collaboration, support, and often the inspiration of their teaching colleagues made all the difference to their individual successes and achievement. We and they should not forget that these winners stand on the shoulders of 9,800 supremely dedicated faculty and teaching staff who make up the UW system. While their work is extraordinary, it is not unusual. When it comes to teaching excellence, these are not the exceptions, they are the examples. They are not the outliers, they are the representatives. In honoring them, we honor all their colleagues, and we say thank you to each and every one of the 9,800 teachers within this university system, and I'd suggest that saying thank you, especially in these challenging times, is something we have to do a lot more of. So with that, here to tell us more, my colleagues on the selection committee. They will each introduce one of the winners. Actually, I will come back and introduce one of the middle one, and then each award recipient will have an opportunity to briefly address the board. We'll start with Regent Tony Evers to present the first award.
Good morning, everybody. And as part of my day job as state superintendent, one of the most enjoyable and meaningful things for me is to reward and honor and recognize highly performing teachers in the K-12 system. So I am absolutely jazzed to be here today to do that in the higher ed area. Professor Hanlon, can you join me up here? Thank you. My privilege to present our first Regents Teaching Excellence Award to Professor Donald Hanlon, who has been teaching and sharing his love for architecture at UW-Milwaukee for the past 25 years. Going far beyond just building and blueprints, he calls architecture a powerful, emotional, and intellectual instrument for interpreting the world. Professor Hanlon says it's his goal to help students experience the joy of discovering their own creative potential. As one of his former students put it, that discovery can be life-changing. Writing in support of our award winner, the student said this: "Don used to tell me that talent is beyond our control. You were either born with it or not. Creative thought, however, can be studied and learned. No other lesson in my architectural education has had such a profound impact on my personal and professional development." In fact, Don describes it like this: "Architecture is an excellent discipline for a restless, inquisitive mind because it relates in fascinating ways to an enormous range of disciplines, from mathematics and science to all the arts and humanities. The best I can do for students is to help them develop an open, curious, and disciplined mind. Then they can teach themselves." To do that, Professor Hanlon has introduced 3 innovative and perhaps unexpected techniques into his design studio. The first is meditation. This, he says, helps students learn, sorry about that, Professor, to control the, I'm sorry, now I really got screwed up. I apologize. First is meditation. This, he says, helps to control the mental environment in which they work, as well as developing a sense of calm that is conducive to focused thinking. Second, he often brings in a teacher of Laban movement analysis to help students become more aware of how human bodies inhabit space and motion, and how bodies shape and describe space. Third, he also teaches specific methods of enhancing creativity. As the student noted, Professor Hanlon contends that creativity is distinct from talent. He puts it like this: whereas talent appears to be a hard wiring of the brain, creativity arises from certain habits of thinking. We need to recognize the habits of mind that restrict or obstruct our creativity and replace them with habits that promote creativity. His textbook on compositions in architecture is widely used, but I should point out Professor Hanlon's teaching and impact reach well beyond the classroom. He has also provided leadership to students groups in a variety of community projects, both locally and globally. He has established a practice of teams of students and community members working together to provide architectural service to many nonprofits in the Milwaukee area that could not individually retain professional architects. He has also led student service projects in Costa Rica, which have provided unique opportunities for architecture students to engage in service learning while honing their design skills in a practical setting. Professor Hanlon has been on the front line in other areas as well. In 2011, he converted Architecture 101, an introduction to architectural theory, to an entirely online course with about 350 students, and currently among the largest online courses offered at UWM. At this time, it's my privilege to introduce our first 2012 Regents Teaching Excellence Award winner, Professor Donald Hanlon.
Thank you so much for that introduction. This is, of course, a phenomenal honor and a pleasure. It just knocked me out when I learned about it. I've had an absolutely wonderful time working here for the last 25 years in the University of Wisconsin system overall and at UWM. Whatever success I might have had, I must attribute a great deal of it to the circumstances. I've had the pleasure and the great opportunity to work within an extraordinarily open and tolerant, boy, my dean understands tolerance, that tolerant environment in which I was allowed to experiment widely, to be successful, but also to make mistakes. And I've enjoyed it tremendously. And as was pointed out in the introduction, yes, the circumstances under which one works has, a tremendous degree of influence, a great influence on what one might be able to succeed at. This is a really tough time, for everybody in higher education throughout the country, and I think what's really significant here is not what I've done, but rather the fact that the university as a whole recognizes and encourages quality in teaching. Teaching is under fire throughout the country. It seems that a lot of people in positions of power and influence had a bad time in education, and they're going to make it difficult for everybody else too. So this is really very important to me, but it's extremely important to the university as a whole. Once again, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it.
You to look at me and think Jose Vasquez is supposed to be here. How's that working out for you? You want to, whatever I do wrong, you just blame Jose. Yeah, it's all in this together, Steve. It is my privilege to present our second Regent Teaching Excellence Awards to Professor Jennifer Koziak of UW-La Crosse. As a faculty member of both the Mathematics Department and the School of Education, Professor Koziak has been actively involved in improving the mathematical preparation of PK-12 teachers since she arrived on campus in 2004. She is known for using a wide variety of strategies in the classroom to help her students learn. This even includes using rap music, which she both writes and performs to help get a point across. Apparently there is quite an epidemic, I understand, on the UW-La Crosse campus of musically inspired educators. We have the guitar strumming chancellor and the math professor rapper. Yeah, I was going to say, quite a party. Please invite Jose, of course. In any event, Professor Koziak has studied and continually researches what pedagogies and technologies are the most effective, and is constantly changing her classroom approach to take advantage of these methods. Indeed, one colleague calls her the epitome of the teacher scholar. Professor Koziak is a leader in the secondary teacher education program at La Crosse campus and has also provided statewide leadership in mathematics education by serving on the Wisconsin Mathematics Council since 2007. She is currently working with 25 teachers on a project that is examining the integration of mathematics with reading and writing. She recognizes that she is preparing educators for future classrooms and deftly blends the traditional with the innovative. Technology is infused into most of her courses, including smart boards, podcasting, and iPads. Mercifully, I know what 2 of the 3 of those things are. Professor Koziak is known for making learning personal by calling on students by name, by designing lessons and activities that reinforce students' diverse background and knowledge and learning styles, and by engaging students in collaborative group work. As already mentioned, she also knows how to shake things up. Students who are perhaps less enthusiastic about math might change their tune after listening to her rap or watching YouTube videos to help them remember a concept. Professor Koziak believes that engaging students in doing mathematics involves creative planning and connecting things to the real world. As she puts it, quote, from creating poems in two voices, relating squares and rectangles, to singing, "You got to fight for your right to use synthetic division." Really? I routinely connect mathematics to other disciplines in order to motivate and excite students. If what we hear from our students is any indication, it works. In recommending Professor Koziak for this award, one of her students commented, "I'm not a math genius, but I have learned from Dr. Koziak how to explain concepts to students so that they understand them, rather than just memorizing the concept to complete a test or assignment." In 2010, she was awarded the Teacher Educator of the Year Award by the Student Wisconsin Education Association. We are delighted now to add to those accolades. Please join me in welcoming our second winner from UW-La Crosse, Professor Jennifer Smith.
Introduction, and now my parents know exactly what I do in the classroom. I hope they're okay with it. It's truly an honor to be here today, and I'd like to thank all of my colleagues because I wouldn't be here without all of their support. And I just remember flying into La Crosse in 2004, wondering how I'm going to inspire my students, the next generation. And through all that support, both in the mathematics department and through the School of Ed, it's really amazing to think that I've been inspired by my students to do better things in my classroom, to find ways to engage them so when they go out and become mathematics teachers, they're going to be engaging the next generation of students at UW-La Crosse as well as all the other sister schools. So it's just really, truly amazing to be here. So I thank you all.
I'm not supposed to be Jose, I'm supposed to be me. But I'm excited to be here today to talk to you guys about FIGS. So the 2012 Regents Teaching Excellence Award for a department or program goes to the First Year Interest Group Program, also known as FIGS, at UW-Madison, represented here by its director, Greg Smith. First Year Interest Groups were developed as sort of a first-year seminar experience to help students make the transition to the university, improve academic performance, and provide students with opportunities to connect with peers and with faculty. You might ask what exactly are FIGs? Well, they're groups of students living and learning together in an interdisciplinary learning community, usually during their first semester. And I do have a personal story. Two of my best friends at UW-Madison both were in FIGs. So I've heard very good things. Each FIG enrolls a group of about 20 students who are co-enrolled in 3 linked classes, usually including an ethnic studies course or a course that explores some element of diversity. FIGs also have addressed subjects such as disability issues, gender equality, and the roles of women. Each FIG is led by a faculty member who teaches the course synthesizing class and who integrates appropriate material. The FIGs program also incorporates service learning opportunities that extend the out-of-class experiences into the surrounding community, giving students a hands-on introduction to the Wisconsin idea. Students may work with children in local schools, with disabled clients in group homes, or incarcerated women and their families. It turns out there's a pretty significant return on investment. Students participating in FIGs earn higher GPAs than non-FIG students, not only after their first semester, but even at the time of graduation. In fact, FIG students are 3 times more likely to achieve GPAs of greater than 3.1. They also have higher retention and graduation rates than non-FIG students. 1/4 of FIG students come from underrepresented minority groups, and it is one of the strongest tools to help students succeed on campus, both academically and socially. The FIGs program has grown significantly since it first started. In the fall of 2001, 4 pilot FIGs enrolled 75 students. By spring of 2012, more than 1,200 students were enrolled in 66 FIGs over 2 semesters. Reflecting on his FIG experience, one student wrote, "My FIG experience was straight out of a movie, life-changing, emotional, and engaging. Another wrote, "We entered college as strangers, and through the FIGs became brothers and sisters. I can never imagine my freshman year without my first-year interest group." The Learning Community Program has become a statewide, national, and even international model, as the director of FIGs has been consulted by colleagues at other UW system campuses and at institutions from across the country and Canada. It is an honor to present our final Regents Teaching Excellence Award to Director Greg Smith on behalf of UW-Madison's First-Year Interest Groups program.
For that very generous introduction. I don't have to say most of what I was going to tell you because you've done it all. Receiving this award is a tremendous honor, not just for me, but also for my colleagues, Terry Fernald, who has worked with FIGs since the very beginning, and Jeff Mamro, who has been our project assistant the last couple of years, working with us on assessment issues. We also owe a great debt of gratitude to Dean Sandifer and Associate Dean Nancy Westfall Johnson, who are here today, who have continued to support us in our efforts. As I said earlier, what we're doing is not just an office of several people working on this project. This is really a campus-wide award. We couldn't have done any of this without the support of colleagues all across campus. We've got support from campus partners in residence life, from the libraries, the Writing Center, the UW Foundation, academic advisors all through different departments. The idea of a learning community that brings students and faculty together is not really new to UW-Madison. This is really an old idea. Alexander Mickeljohn came up with this idea with Experimental College. We're just the latest iteration of it. In their FIGs, students explore areas of study they might not otherwise have considered in ways that stretch their imaginations and hone their critical thinking skills. And a few examples are, for example, classical myth and modern American culture, which is taught by Professor Ron Harris, who's sitting here today. Another is World of the Vikings. Yet another is medical imaging. Yet another one, yet this fall, is bioenergy and sustainability. The real work of FIGs is done by the faculty who teach these key seminars. And they're the ones who are really doing the work in inventing pedagogy, reinventing what they're doing, stretching themselves as well as their students. And of course, there are the students, over 6,000 so far, who have participated in this program, not including the 1,100 that we'll have this fall. You've seen the statistics. Students do better. Thank you for bringing all that up in terms of their GPA and their retention. But what's more impressive to me are the stories that we get in the assessments every year. I couldn't bring all those students with me today, but I do have a couple of statements to add to the ones that you read. One student wrote, "Being part of this FIG has helped me grow as a person. Being part of this FIG has changed the course of my education. Being part of this FIG, above all, also shown me what I want to be, what I want to do with my life. If I had not taken this FIG, I would not be the person that I am today." And the program has affected students, but it has also affected the participating faculty in ways that we didn't anticipate. Most of them report that they changed the way that they teach. They've learned a lot about our student body. They've learned a lot about their colleagues and about themselves. In their assessments and their surveys, they tell us things like, "This was the most fun class I've taught in 43 years. My FIG students were well prepared and took an active role in class participation. There was a strong sense of camaraderie among this class that I've never experienced before." And another wrote last year, "Each year my FIG students give me hope for the future of this nation. I've seen incredible transformations as a result of their service learning." By recognizing FIGs with this award, you're communicating to all of us and all of our colleagues across the UW system that you value the work that we're doing, not just in our FIGs program, but in similar learning community programs across the whole UW system. So on their behalf, I thank you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all of your coming today, and thank you for all of your work. Shane has pointed out to me that I did not ask for approval of the minutes of the April and June meetings. It's kind of like not calling the roll.
Who would do that?
Who would do that? Who would do that? So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April and June meetings?
So moved.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. The reports for the Higher Educational Aids Board, Hospital Authority Board, and the Wisconsin Technical College System Board have been provided. Any questions or comments on any of those? Great. Next. I have to wait. I was going to say something about Regent Walsh, but he's checked out. His retirement is really doing something. We'll come back to that. I wanted to talk a little bit about an article that appeared a couple weeks ago in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, but as long as I'm commenting on articles, I commend to your attention, and I will do it without comment, the two articles in today's Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which appeared on the editorial page. One on the agenda, more autonomy for campuses. UW campuses should have more control over their affairs. Given declining state support, it makes sense and probably will save money. That is the editorial by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. There's also a column, Consequences Needed for Lack of Accountability, authored by Representative Nass. So, when you have time, you might want to read those. They are very timely given our discussions the last few days. Going back to an article that appeared in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel about a couple weeks ago about a collaborative project with UW colleges, UW Madison, UW Platteville, that uses a more advanced student data tracking system to identify early those students at risk of doing poorly or even dropping out, something we talked about yesterday. This is one of 20 projects that received funding through our Growth Agenda for Wisconsin Grant program, led by Mark Nook. The grant program was restructured last year in a collaborative process involving representatives from every UW institution, resulting in the consolidation of what had been 10 separate programs into 2. There are 2 categories of projects being funded, with a larger pot directed at initiatives resulting in substantive institutional or multi-institutional change, and a smaller pot going towards meetings and conferences to address growth agenda goals and priorities. The projects range in focus from STEM education to teacher preparation to closing the achievement gap and to providing more students with opportunities for undergraduate research, something we talked about yesterday, to assessment. Almost $3.9 million was awarded for multi-year projects, all of which are focused on using the best evidence-driven expertise of UW system faculty and staff to help students be more successful. There's a long list of projects in your materials, and I'd encourage you to look over that. It's an impressive program and a great use of tight resources to support the system's colleges and universities in reaching our growth agenda goals. Regent Walsh, on my notes for my comments today was a question mark comment on Regent Walsh's retirement. And so I will elect to comment on Regent Walsh's retirement from the practice of law, acknowledge a wonderful career, and also tell everybody that if they still need to get a hold of you, you still, I understand, will be available at your law office. So, congratulations on that.
When the price is right, I might add.
I understand your hourly rate has gone down. Regent Pruitt could not allow that to go by without some comment. Who, by the way, used to make the motions for going to closed session, and now Regent Felton does. But this fall, for the first time, President Riley will be sending a letter to nearly 12,000 Wisconsin high school juniors and seniors who took the AP exam in the spring of 2012. I think you shared that letter with everyone. And this letter is being sent, obviously the purpose, during prime application season, with the hope that we can encourage our high schoolers to take additional AP courses and, of course, consider pursuing a college education at one of our UW system institutions. As Kevin noted in his letter, students' choices to take rigorous courses in high school is a sign of their willingness to take on tough challenges and should reflect favorably on them when it comes to submitting college applications. Kevin also points out that taking AP courses could potentially reduce the amount of time and money needed to complete a college degree. The letter complements other similar efforts that have been taken in recent years to reach out to Wisconsin Covenant scholars and former UW students who have never achieved their degree. I have a daughter who's taken some AP courses this fall. That's good. I hope she'll consider, unlike her sister, going to a UW institution. But I'd also like to congratulate our cranberry grower, Regent Roberts, on his new position as Regent Liaison to the Higher Educational Aids Board. Gary follows in the footsteps of Regent Jeff Bartell, who has been an excellent advocate for financial aid through the years through UW. Regent Bartell, thanks for your work, and Gary, lots of luck with your new Governor's also recommended a new student appointee to the Higher Educational Aids Board. Tim Rindle is a student at UW Madison, hails from Arcadia. We're getting that western Wisconsin flavor to EF, and we look forward to his service on that as well. Finally, I should mention our system's efforts to reach out to legislative candidates. It is certainly that time of year, as we all know. Following the primaries that were held last month, President Riley sent out a letter, did send a letter of introduction to all the candidates in the next 2 weeks, providing some information on our colleges, universities, and extension networks. Included in the letter will be key facts about higher education, including some of the metrics we discussed during yesterday's presentation of the accountability reports. Apparently it reached one of our legislators already. As we've done in the years past, we want to take this opportunity to engage those running for elected office in a constructive dialogue about one of our state's most valuable assets, our system. With that, I'll turn things over to you, President.
All right. Thank you, President Smith, and good morning, everybody. Good to see you all again. Earlier this month, I wanted to let you know that Interim Chancellor David Ward, or Chancellor Encore, as some of the students at Madison have taken to calling him, and I took part in a day-long event at the Wisconsin State Capitol called Connecting the Capitals. The idea behind this new initiative, as the name suggests, is to strengthen relationships between state officials and Wisconsin's congressional staff, and this was an idea that came out of the governor's office, his federal liaison. Very good idea. And we had an opportunity at that event then to meet with congressional staffers, and these were almost uniformly people who lived their lives in Washington, working for our elected representatives there. Some of them had never been to Wisconsin. Many of them, if they'd been to Wisconsin, had not been in the Capitol building where we met in the governor's conference office. So it was a really nice opportunity to share some interests and concerns and field their questions. I talked a bit about college costs and the federal government's role in helping us to maintain affordability for our students and families in Wisconsin. David talked some about that, but also emphasized the federal role in supporting competitive university research and development. So we look forward to further of those kinds of opportunities. On a related matter, I wanted to say that we are grateful to this Congress for including a one-year fix on subsidized Stafford loans, that federal loan program, by preventing the interest rate from doubling this year. That was a very helpful thing they did. And elsewhere on the federal horizon, you're probably aware that the Federal Budget Control Act of 2011 included a provision that will levy automatic cuts to federal spending beginning in January 2013, so this next January, unless Congress and the President take actions to stop it, and that's the provision known as sequestration. This same act also places statutory caps on annual discretionary spending through fiscal year 2021. A significant part of federal discretionary funding supports student financial aid and academic research and development, which means higher education is vulnerable to caps and across-the-board cuts in discretionary funding. I recently joined more than 150 of my colleagues, university and presidents and chancellors from around the country to ask that sequestration be prevented and that a long-term balanced approach be implemented to address the country's deficits and debt. Sequestration has the potential to cut several $1 billion from key areas important to UW system institutions, including research and student aid and health care. While mandatory funding for Pell Grants would be protected, there is concern that discretionary contributions to Pell might be affected under sequestration. This is significant because we are seeing applications in greater numbers from an increasingly diverse group of students who also happen to be low income. In 2010-11, there were more than 48,500 undergraduate Pell recipients in the UW system, meaning potentially more than 1/3 of all UW undergraduates could be affected by any changes to the Pell program. So clearly, this is something we'll have to pay attention to in the months ahead, and our Assistant Vice President for Federal Relations, Chris Andrews, is doing just that. Now I'd like to share a couple of good news items from around the system, and I'd like to kick off by noting a big good news item about the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference known as WIAC, which will be celebrating its centennial anniversary this year. Particularly at a time when the highest levels of college athletics around the country seem to have been afflicted with such tumult. This Division III conference is, in the words of a very glowing USA Today story last fall, a, quote, and these are their words, not ours, resolute symbol of stability and success, unquote. This morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Gary Karner, who has admirably led that conference, holding the position of Commissioner of WIAC for 16 years now. The centennial is a big deal, and Gary and his small staff are honoring the occasion in exuberant style. I was pleased to attend the kickoff centennial banquet earlier this month with a number of the chancellors, and Gary and company had more than 1,400 guests at this banquet at the Alliant Energy Center, and he had to cut off the additional people from coming because they just couldn't accommodate them even in that big venue. So it was a great evening, and here to tell us a little more about it and the centennial celebration in WIAC is Gary. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much, President Riley, President Smith, and esteemed members of the Board of Regents. It's really my pleasure to be here to share with you some events and activities that are occurring, some of which have already occurred, as President Riley alluded to, and also will be occurring during the course of this upcoming academic year, which is the 100th anniversary of the WIAC. The WIAC, as you know, is comprised of 9 of the 13 four-year campuses of the UW system, and we all compete at the NCAA Division III level. And what that means is our student athletes compete without the benefit of athletic scholarships, and to use an old cliche, they really play for the love of the game. It is really the true essence of college athletics when these student athletes compete at our level. The WIAC was founded in 1913. And of the 9 campuses, 9 institutions that currently comprise the WIAC, 7 of them were at that initial meeting in 1913. UW Stout joined in 1916, and UW Eau Claire in 1917. And with the exception of the departure of UW Milwaukee in 1964, which, by the way, they still regret, those 9 institutions, the conference has been stable ever since 1917. And when you look at, as President Riley alluded to earlier, when you look at all the changes, the landscape has changed dramatically in college athletics, particularly at the Division I level, where you need a scorecard literally to find out or to figure out who's in what conference. That kind of stability it's found nowhere else in college athletics. One of the challenges that we had as a conference as we approached our centennial year was to celebrate this milestone in a manner commensurate with the most successful Division III conference in NCAA history. This conference has captured 94 NCAA national championships. Let me put that in perspective. There's 42 Division III conferences. There are some conferences in Division III that have never captured a single NCAA championship, and the second highest total is 71. So we're 23 championships ahead of the second most championships won by any single conference in Division III history. So that was the challenge that we faced, and I think we've met that challenge. And the banquet on August 4th was just an example of that. We had 1,405 attendees at that banquet from 22 states outside of the state of Wisconsin. So people came from all over to attend that banquet. And it was just, again, an incredible event. I thank President Riley and the Chancellor for all their support. I also did provide each of you with a little bag to take home with you. I know you have a lot of materials always to take home with you, but in that bag are a couple of items, and I'd just like to refer to one item right now if you care to pull that out, and that is the actual banquet program. And the reason I ask you to pull that out is I just want to allude to a couple of pages in this program that I think you'll find of interest. You know, the conference, as I mentioned, was founded in 1913, and the Board of Regents really played a significant role from the very, very start of the conference. And if you turn into a couple of pages into that program, you'll notice we have a section called Significant Events in WIAC History. It was our attempt to kind of chronicle the timeline, the evolution of the conference, actually beginning before 1913 when the conference was formally founded. And you'll notice that in 1906, in that timeline, River Falls President Warren J. Breyer called for the abolishment of football by the Board of Regents. With all due respect to President Breyer, I'm thankful that the Board of Regents at that particular time had the foresight to say, no, I don't think we want to go there. But that was synonymous at that time in 1906 with a national call for the abolishment of football. And the reason I bring that up is it was in 1906 that Teddy Roosevelt, President Roosevelt at the time, convened a group of presidents, college presidents, and to talk about what was going on in college football specifically, and that was the beginnings of the NCAA in 1906. I also want to point out in 1908, Whitewater's faculty assessed 2% of 1 month's salary to benefit athletics, and that assessment was raised to 2.5% in 1909. I've repeatedly asked the chancellors, why don't we do the same thing today? And it just, for some reason, just doesn't resonate. It just doesn't go anywhere beyond those requests. I also want to just mention a couple other items related to the Board of Regents. 1913, which was the year the conference was founded, the Board of Regents appropriated $4,000 for the support of athletic teams. And quickly thereafter, they appropriated $10,000 for the construction of athletic fields at Whitewater. And that included, just shows where the dollar went in those days, Hamilton Athletic Field, which included a football field, a baseball diamond, track, and concrete stands, all for $10,000. Pretty good buy back then. Shortly thereafter, in 1914, the Board of Regents authorized the Athletic Association at each of the normal schools to collect a $2 annual athletic fee from each student. Now, why is that significant? Because, quite frankly, that's the fee that we are still very much dependent upon at the Division III level for the support of our athletic programs today, and it started way back in 1914. Now, there are a lot of other things that have gone on with the Centennial, and I know you received some calendars from us last year. We produced a 2-year calendar that hopefully you appreciated. We also had some artwork commissioned. We found an artist in Duluth, Minnesota, who was willing to, at our ability to pay, which, as you all know, is difficult sometimes, to commission some artwork. And what you see off to my right here is the original artwork that he did for us. It's a colored pencil drawing, if you can imagine that. If you want a little closer up view of it, there's actually a depiction of it on the back of your program. That's a colored pencil drawing, and it's just a remarkable, and I bought the original, so in the event that you want to come up and take a closer look at that later. So we are very pleased. All 9 campuses are depicted in there. A number of different sports are depicted, and like I said, we couldn't be more pleased the way that turned out. As a matter of fact, Notre Dame saw this print, and they have now commissioned that artist, Tim Cortez, to do the 150th anniversary print for Notre Dame football. I suspect Notre Dame's probably going to pay him a little bit more than we do. That's beside the point. He was extremely pleased. We also selected all-time teams, and those are listed in the program that you have in front of you. We also established a Hall of Fame, and we at the banquet on August 4th, we inducted the inaugural WIAC Hall of Fame class, and as you look through that, I think you'll recognize some of the names that went into that particular class. Governor Walker also was kind enough to proclaim the 2012-13 academic year, the year of the WIAC, and on the very front of your program, you'll see a copy of that declaration or that proclamation. I also have the framed proclamation here, and I'll pass that around so everybody can see it firsthand. We are also producing a documentary through the course of this year, and we're hopeful, we anticipate that documentary will air on FS Wisconsin, FSN North, and maybe even nationally on Fox's College Sports Network. So we have a lot going on. We've done a lot already, and we have a lot going on throughout this academic year, and hopefully if you have a chance to attend any of our championships at this upcoming academic year on any of our 9 campuses, you'll see that we'll be celebrating our centennial throughout the upcoming academic year. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to entertain them at this time, or please feel free to contact me at any point in the future. Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work. In other news, UW Stout has received a $240,000 grant from the federal government to help small and medium-sized companies increase their use of technology and become more competitive. The U.S. Economic Development Administration grant will be distributed to the UW Stout Discovery Center over the course of the next 2 years for applied research and technical assistance for entrepreneurs and existing small and medium-sized businesses. The goal is to accelerate the use of innovative technologies, increase product development and job creation, attract investment, enhance regional competitiveness. Officials estimate that 20 projects would be paid for by the grant, creating some 60 jobs and leveraging $1.5 million in private investment. So congratulations to Chancellor Sorensen and the UW Stout campus community. UW Stevens Point recently learned that the U.S. Department of Education has reinstated funding for its Upward Bound program after a campus and community appeal of a decision to defund the program. Upward Bound prepares low-income, at-risk, first-generation students for college. The Upward Bound program will be funded for 5 years at more than $414,000 per year, serving approximately 100 students a year from 10 school districts in central and northern Wisconsin. U.S. Senator Herb Kohl, U.S. Congressman Sean Duffy, and UW Stevens Point administration, as well as a grassroots effort by Upward Bound alumni, students, families, and staff, advocated for the return of that funding. So we're delighted, Bernie, to hear that you'll be able to continue that program. UW Oshkosh is once again being nationally recognized and saluted for its strong commitment to environmental sustainability. The Sierra Club and Sierra Magazine released its annual Coolest Schools ranking based on the greenness of participating universities. UW Oshkosh was ranked 14th in the nation, a real tribute to its hard work in this area. Universities were evaluated in a broad range of categories, including energy supply, efficiency, food, academics, purchasing, transportation, waste management, administration, financial investments, innovation, and other initiatives. As Provost and Vice Chancellor Lane Ernst noted, quote, "We have made the principle of living a sustainable life a core component of the academic experience here. Our faculty and staff help students see the actions they can take on campus and off to lessen our impact on the earth and encourage others to follow their lead." The UW Eau Claire Foundation is celebrating its acquisition of one of the nation's largest collections of notes and recordings by many of the biggest names in jazz. Woody Herman, Count Basie, Maynard Ferguson, Bill Holman, Stan Kenton, Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Henry Mancini, and Glenn Miller are among the jazz musicians whose original notes and recordings, many of which are autographed and one of a kind, are in this collection. The collection's been named the John L. Buckholz Jazz Library after the UW Eau Claire Professor Emeritus of English and a longtime jazz musician and supporter of jazz studies. As we all know, much of the upper Midwest has been suffering through severe drought conditions this summer. While it's not possible to do anything about the actual lack of rainfall, there are still choices to be made about issues like herd management and minimizing crop losses. And UW's cooperative extension is in the front lines to help. Extension Responds Drought 2012, which is a website, was launched in early July, offering a wealth of information for farmers, including buying and selling hay or forage, crop insurance, and livestock comfort during hot weather. Homeowners also can find their information on lawn and garden care, as well as human health issues in high heat. This site, which was touted by the governor during his drought damage tour, has proved very popular. And I think, Ray, did you part of that tour? You were part of the drought damage tour. So Ray went around with the governor on this. From mid-July to mid-August, Google Analytics reported over 8,000 site visitors and 17,000 page views of the site. Another example of the Wisconsin idea in action, addressing an old problem, drought, with a new high-tech web solution. Speaking of drought, or I should say not, UW Superior is very pleased to report that the campus is recovering nicely after a storm of the century deluge delivered 9 inches of rain to the area on June 19th and 20th. Virtually every building on campus experienced some degree of flooding. The university library had 8 feet of water in its lower level, and the heating plant was flooded and inoperable. Thanks to hard work by university employees, assistance from UW System, and help from a professional disaster recovery contractor, UW Superior reopened the day after the flood and has completed its summer classes and camps. The library staff continued serving patrons from a remote location until the building reopened on August 7th. Just this week, one of the 3 boilers at the heating plant resumed operations, which is sufficient to meet the campus's immediate needs. Students returning to campus later this month are expected to encounter minimal disruption or inconvenience. As we will undoubtedly hear from Regent Whitburn when he reports on the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee's discussion of this topic yesterday, high praise is due for Chancellor Wachter and her superior colleagues for their cool and competent crisis management and recovery. And I think we owe the Chancellor and everybody at Superior who worked on this a round of applause. Boosted, and back to our athletics history here, boosted by national championships and strong playoff performances, the UW Whitewater athletic program finished 5th in the 2011-12 Directors' Cup standings. The Warhawks' 815.5 points is the most in school and WIAC history. No public university scored higher than UW Whitewater. The Directors' Cup, awarded annually by the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics, honors athletic success in men's and women's college sports in the United States. UW Whitewater competes in the Division III category, which includes about 450 schools. Athletic Director Paul Plinsky calls it, quote, an incredible accomplishment, unquote, and says Whitewater's student athletes are, quote, in a class all their own. The Warhawks earned national championships this past year in both football and men's basketball. They also placed in the top 12 or higher in NCAA competition in men's indoor track, wrestling, women's soccer, baseball, women's tennis, and men's outdoor track. So Chancellor Telfer continues just to get buffer and buffer all the time. Finally, UW-Milwaukee is proud to share the news that Bob Greenstreet, Dean of UWM's School of Architecture, one of whose faculty was honored today with one of our teaching awards, and Bob Greenstreet, some of you will remember, is a former interim chancellor at UW-Milwaukee. Bob was recently awarded the Freedom of the City of London. Now, Bob follows in the footsteps of his father, Joseph Greenstreet, a designer of world fairs for the British government, in receiving this honor. The Freedom is one of the oldest surviving ceremonies in the United Kingdom and is believed to date back to the 13th century. Privileges accorded to recipients have historically included the right to walk around London with an unsheathed sword, the right to be hung with a silk rather than a hemp noose, should the occasion demand, notably treason or murder, or perhaps in Bob's case designing an ugly building, and the right to herd sheep over London Bridge without paying a toll. In receiving this recognition, Dr. Greenstreet is in very good company. Former recipients of the Freedom Honor include Winston Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt, Luciano Pavarotti, Bill Gates, Nelson Mandela, Pitt the Elder and younger, J.K. Rowling, and Colin Firth. So congratulations to Dean Greenstreet. Great honor. Now, for an August poem to conclude my remarks. This is a short poem by Thomas Hardy. Most of us think of Thomas Hardy as a novelist, which he indeed was, but he was also a poet. And it's called An August Midnight. A shaded lamp and a waving blind, and the beat of a clock from a distant floor. On this scene enter, winged, horned, and spined, a longlegs, a moth, and a Dumbledore. While mid my page there idly stands a sleepy fly that rubs its hands. Thus meet we five in this still place, at this point of time, at this point of space. My guests besmear my newly penned line, or bang at the lamp and fall supine. God's humblest they, I muse, yet why? They know earth's secrets that know not I. So for those of you who caught the Dumbledore reference and are Harry Potter fans, you'll know that Dumbledore is the headmaster of the Hogwarts Academy in the Harry Potter series. And by the way, this was an unintended connection when I thought of this, but J.K. Rowling was one of the previous winners of the Freedom of the City of London. So a Dumbledore, besides being a headmaster character in Harry Potter, is a loud buzzing insect or bumblebee. So, happy August.
Thank you, President Riley. On we go to actions taken by Business Finance. You've got a written report of actions taken by Business Finance and Audit Committee. I'll ask Regent Richland to comment briefly and respond to any questions.
Good luck following that call. Committee approved the UW-Madison contract with Amgen. This is a 4-year data analysis agreement expected to generate more than $1 million for the campus. We reviewed the summary of gift grant and contract awards for the last year. Total awards from federal and non-federal sponsors over this period were approximately $1.5 billion. As President Riley intimated, we received a very thorough briefing from the Chancellor and from the Vice Chancellor, Jan Hansen, at Superior on the disaster. They were there in the middle of the night watching 8 feet of water accumulate in the heating plant. Films were shared with us, reminded us of movies with submarines about to sink. Wonderful response from the system, DOA, and also their disaster relief company that had been in place, BMS CAT. When we were there for our meeting in April, the library, we were in the library, 139,000 volumes. More than 80% are now gone. Wonderful efforts in the community to respond. We also heard from several UW system representatives on the status of the very important efforts that are going on to strengthen the policies, procedures, and practices related to safeguarding children in response to Governor Walker's Executive Order 54 and the audit report on reporting crimes against children. The challenge, of course, is how to keep children safe in light of the vast variety of programs that are going on our campuses designed to serve children. Much progress is being made, and the committee will continue to receive briefings until new procedures are in place system-wide. Our audit director, Elizabeth Dion, presented the operations review and audit status update for us. She gave an overview of a major project activity and discussed the recently completed audit on undergraduate academic advising. I should note that a major system-wide audit on travel procedures, expenses, management of travel is now well underway, in which we're looking at all of the campuses. In the report led by Senior Vice President Morgan, Associate Vice President Al Christ outlined the proposed implementation steps for the new university personnel systems. As we know, we'll have 2 new systems, one for UW-Madison, the other for the rest of the campuses. The committee will receive a more final update in October, and I'm happy to report that the board will have the 2 plans in front of us in December for approval. Associate Vice President Julie Gordon and another member of her staff provided us an update on the development of the university's new travel program that will be put in place system-wide. This is an additional flexibility granted under Act 22. Senior Vice President Morgan has reached to the committee looking for input on potential subjects for deep dives, work of the committee during this next year, and we have concluded that we will focus in 3 areas, first being the cost of higher education, the second being financing higher education, and the third being best practices in board oversight here of NCAA athletics. Finally, on behalf of our committee, I would move Resolution 1283, which is the approval of the UW contractual agreement with Amgen Incorporated. 4-year deal, more than $1 million to the university.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Whitburn, we will go to the actions taken by capital planning and budget. You have received a written report on that, and I'll ask Regent Bartel to comment briefly and respond to any questions on that.
Thank you, President Smith. The committee began its meeting yesterday by hearing two presentations on building projects that were included in our 2013-15 capital budget request. One was a UW Madison project, and one was a UW La Crosse project, representing on the one hand a academic building, that is the major addition to the chemistry building in Madison, and at La Crosse the new student union. And we also heard a presentation by senior architect Maura Donnelly about a recently completed residence hall study that was made in cooperation with the Department of Administration's Division of Facilities Development. All of these are reflective of presentations and deliberations to the capital planning and budget staff that went into creating our capital budget request this year. The committee also then reviewed 5 resolutions that were unanimously approved. They are listed in your materials. 1.3.D at UW La Crosse relating to a parking ramp and police building project. 1.3.E at UW Madison requesting authority to adjust the budget of the Memorial Union renovation Phase 1 project. 1.3.F UW Whitewater having to do with the multi-sport facility Phase 3 project. 1.3.G which was approval of 6 all-agency maintenance and repair projects on 5 campuses. And then finally 1.3.H which was authority to seek release of funds to prepare campus master plans for Parkside, Superior, and Whitewater. All of those campuses' master plans are quite dated and need updating. So I move these resolutions, 1.3.D, E, F, G, and H, for approval.
Any of those want to take out for any reason? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mr. President, concludes my report.
Thank you, Jeff. We will now go to, also have received a written report of actions taken by the Education Committee, and I'll ask Regent Milner to comment again and respond to any questions.
Thank you, President Smith. Jose left the long and the short of the Regents, and here's the long and here's the short. You have the written report in front of you, and that accurately, it provides an accurate summary of the meeting. I would like to note a few things. First of all, the meeting began with an excellent presentation by Regent Emeritus Gerard Randall and MATC President Michael Focus, who talked about the initiatives that are going on in Milwaukee to help the stressed K through 12 students in the Milwaukee system. That was a really excellent presentation. That was both video and in person. I'd also like to make a couple of comments. Our committee brainstormed a set of priorities on which we'd like to focus in the coming year. Our top priority includes the flexible degree model, dual enrollment, and underrepresented minority student access. It's important to note that these 3 topics are interrelated and can be addressed concurrently by focusing on how to build bridges between our K through 12 and our higher education, especially for those students whom are often left behind, either as adults or as students of color. Let me also mention that the committee felt particularly good about some actions that we took that were out of the ordinary. The first was the dissolution, and we don't often dissolve a course, but the dissolution of the consortial Doctor of Physical Therapy, and the conversion of that degree to 2 degrees as independent degrees at UW-La Crosse and UW-Milwaukee. And second is the approval of substantive revisions to the UW Systems program planning, review, and approval process. This is something that's been going on within the board planning for a few years now. And this was a substantial review, substantive revisions to the systems planning, review, and approval. That has not been changed for over 20 years. This provides us with a newer process, and it also provides us as Regents with an opportunity to review those changes in subsequent meetings and years as we see how these new changes evolve. With that, I would like to move the consent agenda and say that the Educational Committee unanimously approved the minutes of the June 7th, 2012 meeting, along with the following 7 resolutions, which I now move for adoption. I'm not going to read through all of them. They're in your list, and time is of the essence. So it's the resolution 1.1.A sub 2 through sub 6, and also resolution 1.1 sub B, and resolution 1.1 sub D. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Anybody want to take any of those out? All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Last but not least, our newest committees, the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee. We have the report, and I'll ask Regent Bradley, the chair of that, to briefly discuss and respond to any questions.
Thank you, President Smith. You are right. Yesterday was historic. It was the first standalone session of our new fourth standing committee of the Board of Regents. The purpose of the READY Committee is to bring into sharper focus the work that goes on by our faculty and staff throughout the UW system in our missions of research and public service, especially in a modern-day economy. We started out our meeting by inviting 2 important people to join us at our committee table. One was our own Dave Brookhart, Assistant Vice President for Economic Development, and the other was Ryan Murray, who is the Deputy Secretary and Chief Operating Officer of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or WEDC. I think that Ryan's presence at our meeting and close attention to the presentations and really underscored WEDC's commitment to the collaboration between the UW system and the new state agency. I also mentioned to Ryan and asked him to thank the Department Secretary, Paul Jaden, for the very nice and encouraging letter that was in our materials yesterday. And if you haven't read Paul Jaden's letter, I suggest you do. Now, as we all know from our student days, as you embark on a new project, a good thing to do is a review of the literature to find out where you are currently. And we've been doing our review of the literature for the last few months, if you will. We started in April with our meeting of the committee as a whole at UW Superior, and we learned about a lot of activities that are going on in that part of the state, dealing with research and economic development and technology transfer from our campuses. And then in June, we learned additional information of what is going on out of UW-Milwaukee. So we continued our review of the literature, so to speak, yesterday with 3 presentations. The first one was from Dr. Carmel Ruffalo, who has a joint appointment at UW-Milwaukee and UW-Parkside. The written report that you received summarizes what Dr. Ruffalo mentioned to us. But she's identifying in a program that is only about 1 year old a lot of very important partnerships and corporate engagement in southeastern Wisconsin through the resources of UW-Milwaukee and UW-Parkside. She's got some very ambitious goals, and she's willing to come back 1 year from now and report on the progress in southeastern Wisconsin. I told her we'd probably hold her to that. Our second presentation came from Dr. Molly John, whom you might remember reported to us at UW Superior. John is the head of the WISES Technology Foundation, and in addition to talking to us about some of the developments that are going on in WISES, the efforts to foster licensing of technology that comes out of research from our comprehensive campuses. He also gave us an update on the progress of the Wisconsin Small Company Advancement Program, or known as WSCAP. And then you'll see in the written report that you received, he also identified some recommendations for what we could do to achieve even greater progress through WISES. Our final presentation was from UW Chancellor Dean Van Galen. You might remember that Chancellor Van Galen was part of the ad hoc committee that led to the Regents approving, or creation rather, I should say, of the READY Committee. And Chancellor Van Galen talked about the importance of undergraduate research opportunities as an essential part of a modern-day college education. And not only how the research opportunities benefit the students who get to participate in them, but also benefit the state because of the added horsepower in working on projects like that. Chancellor Van Galen was joined by a member of his faculty, Dr. Tim Leiden, who is the director of the Tissue and Cellular Innovation Center at UW River Falls. And you can read in your written report the information that Dr. Leiden shared with us. So I think we've added significantly to our review of the literature, and we see that there is a significant amount of activity going on at our comprehensive campuses, and in some cases also at our two-year institutions, in the area of taking the expertise of our faculty and driving that into helping solve some problems that affect the communities in our state and beyond. But two themes emerge from the information that we've been able to gather over the last several months. One of them is that for a relatively small and targeted additional investment, we really could be doing so much more. If you look at the projections of revenue and accomplishment from our comprehensive campuses that Molly John has made coming out of WISES, and the relatively small amount of money that would enable them to accomplish so much more, there really is a lot more we could do. Dave Bruchart is aware of that. Ryan Murray is aware of that. And we might be seeing recommendations coming from them, either recommendations of budgetary assistance in this area through the UW system or through WEDC, or it might be a combination of both. The second theme that emerges from this is that in some cases we have policies in place that have developed over the years that in some ways impede progress. And in other cases, because this is a relatively new thing, we don't have policies in place that could allow faculty and staff at our comprehensive institutions and UW colleges campuses to do a better job. So stay tuned. I think you're going to see, as the READY Committee matures, developments in both of those areas. So, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for your leadership on that. All right. Well, moving along, we'll now have an update on the final report of the Legislative Task Force on UW Restructuring and Operational Flexibilities. And for that, we'll turn to Task Force Chair Vice President Calder.
Thank you. If you all don't have your task force report, or if you only have it in electronic form, and you'd like a signed hard copy.
Are you going to be available for book signing or what?
For a slight fee.
At Barnes and Noble, or where are you?
The task force met a total of 7 times between December and June. Since the last board meeting, the members of the task force reviewed preliminary recommendations, report drafts, and voted on the final report. With those steps concluded, the Special Task Force on UW Restructuring and Operational Flexibilities released its report earlier this month. You do have a copy electronically, but Jane does, I think you do have some extra hard copies if you prefer them. I'm not going to obviously read through a lot of it, but I want to highlight a few items. The task force found that the primary responsibility for governance of the UW system should remain in total with the Board of Regents. Task force agreed with the Regents ad hoc work group on UW system structure and governance, chaired by Regent Smith, that institutional advisory board, which would include 1 or 2 regent members designated by board executive committee, should be created at the discretion of each chancellor. The task force did not make any recommendation regarding the role of the legislature in establishing tuition rates, but did recommend that the Board of Regents submit a long-term tuition plan to the legislature for consideration, or at least for their knowledge. The task force also found value in many of the steps being pursued by the UW University Personnel System Task Force, including that the Board of Regents be authorized to request funding for adjustment in employee compensation and benefits in its biennial budget request, and provide merit-based salary increases to UW employees using base resources. As noted during yesterday's discussion of the 13-15 budget, both of these approaches would require a legislative change. The task force also supported a series of recommendations that would provide much-needed procurement and capital planning flexibilities to UW. In addition, the task force also recommended that an independent study of state-building processes be conducted in order to determine whether additional changes which would yield additional efficiencies are possible. As noted in the report, some of the recommendations can be implemented under the Board of Regents' current authority, while others will require statutory change or action by other state agencies. Finally, I wanted to thank the UW staff who presented, developed background materials, and responded to questions raised by the task force. I also want to thank some individuals, and I want to do that. I want to tell you who they are because they did a lot of work on this project. From the Department of Administration, Sarah Heineck and Brianne Boggs. From the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, Bob Lang, Dave Lopnow, and Emily Pope. And from the UW system, David Miller, Jessica Tormey, and Christopher Frederick. I want to thank them very much. They did a lot of work. This was a very condensed project that took up a lot of time of the people I mentioned. Also, I'd like to thank the chancellors that were on the committee, Chancellor Seals, Cross, and Wells, Regents Tyler and Higgins, and Vice Chancellor Darrell Bazell of Madison. Darrell's report on the definition of neutrinos is not included in the task force, but if you'd like to know more about it, he will share some information with you. That concludes my report, and thanks for your interest in everything that the task force was doing.
Well, thank you, Mike, for the update and all the excellent, and I know it's hard, long work that you've done in leading the task force over the past year. As Mike indicated, the task force supported a series of recommendations ranging from the creation of institutional advisory boards to enhancements to our transfer information system. It's important to remember that while Regent Fellow was the chair and that several chancellors and regents who he's mentioned served as members, this was a legislative task force, not just a UW working group. I think it's very crucial to keep in mind. Therefore, some of the recommendations need to be addressed and considered through the legislative process and the state administrative process. As much as we just like to mandate some of those things to happen, I don't think that's within all of our purview. President Riley and the system.
Regent Smith?
Yes.
Excuse me. I think we should publicly recognize Regent Falbo for all the work that he did and what a great job he did. And if he didn't do it, somebody else would have had to do it.
And saying President Riley and the system and the board staff are already reviewing the final recommendations and have begun making significant progress, I think, on them. In some cases, take the approach that's recommended by the task force sometime, and in some cases, there's going to be a different implementation that we'll be recommending. For example, under board policies, chancellors already have the ability to pursue the creation of institutional advisory councils, but we may want to review that policy to see if there's some tweaking needed to make sure those councils are more useful and to include regents. I know with UW-Madison, we've already set up that institutional board, and Chancellor Board is far along with that. There's also the improving transfer options for students. UW's system will have discussions with the private institutions about how to approach adding these institutions to our transfer information system. System staff are discussing flexibility measures, ongoing discussion with DOA, and working with the governor and the legislature to advance those. Finally, I'd like to point out that many of the issues addressed by the task force fit within the new administrative approach for system administration that had been developed in response to the recommendation of the President's Advisory Committee on the roles of UW system administration. As additional flexibilities are provided by the state, additional authority is being moved to UW institutions. Again, as President Falbo indicated, Mark acknowledged, I want to thank all the regents, the chancellors, and UW system staff who worked so hard on this. So, any other comments or questions that anybody has for Mike or anybody else to do with the task force before we move on? Kevin, you have anything you want to add?
Well, it's just occurring to me as you were talking about the ongoing process of having more flexibility and autonomy, ability to operate for the chancellors and the campuses that the task force passed, and we will continue that momentum. The new academic program review process that Regent Miller and her committee took up yesterday and approved, and you've approved now, is one good big example of that ongoing process. So we are in the midst of it, and we're trying to push it along on as many fronts as we possibly can. Again, some of it we can do on our own, some of it we need the help from the state to be able to do. And that's, I think, one of the benefits of the task force, Mike. Good group of people on record, not just us. We need to keep moving along in that process.
Well, I think I don't think our work's done, and maybe just specifically mine to now go back to the Joint Finance Committee and see how we can keep them moving.
Great. We will all be grateful for that help.
All right. We're at the point of communications, petitions, and memorials. Are any of those from any of our members today? Well, then we'll take a very early 10-minute recess, and we'll reconvene in open session to consider a resolution to go into closed session.